Hello everybody, it's Siobhan again from At One Wellbeing. So the next topic that we're going to cover in our series of videos is the menopause. And what I want to do today is just to take us through a short presentation, as I generally do, on the key aspects of the menopause in terms of emotional and mental health. And really it is to, I suppose, support you if you are perimenopausal or menopausal, to recognize some of the emotional mental health, behavioural things that can really impact us during this phase in our lives. But I also want to say that, you know what, the menopause is not simply an issue for women. The menopause, is something that should be talked about regardless of gender, particularly when it comes to the changes that take place in our lives at that particular time. And, when you're in work and when you're, with your partner, your husband, your family, just to think through the necessity really to bring the conversation about the menopause into the open. And I believe, that it shouldn't be something that's talked about behind closed doors, that it's something that, the stigma around it is there. And why? Why? Because the menopause affects all women when they get to a certain age in their lives. And why should we not talk about it? So I'm all on for bringing these things out into the open, having the conversation, destigmatizing, normalizing conversations around the menopause. Because you know what, if it's hidden, and it can't be talked about, and there's a shame and embarrassment attached to it, you know what, that makes the menopause experience much more difficult for women who are going through this phase in their lives. So as normal, as you know, I will start to deliver the presentation as I always do. And what I want to say as well is, I have been working in the mental health field for many, many years, right? And I only ever talk about things that I have a great deal of knowledge on. So I'm not going to be having conversations or talking to you today about the medical side of the menopause, because that needs to be covered by a medical professional. What I want to do today is to talk about understanding how to manage your emotions and your mood and your feelings during the menopause. And it's as simple as that. So I'm going to take you through a couple, I suppose, of definitions, or not definitions, a descriptor of what the menopause is. And I think, you know what, we all know what it is, but this was taken directly from the NHS website. And the menopause is when a woman stops having her periods and is no longer able to get pregnant. The periods usually start to become less frequent over the few months or indeed years before they stop altogether. And then sometimes they can just suddenly stop, right? So that is the menopause. It's when a woman stops having her periods, can't get pregnant. The lead up to it can, be a couple of years. It's the perimenopause. You can stop having regular periods, and then they come and then they go, and then 6 months they stop. So they generally say if your periods have stopped for like 1 full year, then you're in the menopause. Before that, it is perimenopause. So for us as women, you know what, we know our own bodies, we recognize what's going on in our own bodies. And the most important part of this is that the menopause is a natural part of aging. It normally occurs between 45 and 55 years of age as a woman's estrogen levels start to decline. And in the UK, the average age for a woman to start the menopause is 51. So between 45 and 55 years of age, we can be perimenopausal for even a couple of years beforehand. And there's just something, I think, empowering for us as women, and indeed for men, to recognize that there are changes that take place in a woman's body. And these changes are a natural part of aging. And that's it. That is it. And I also believe that if I know enough about the symptoms of the menopause and what to look out for, and what I can do for myself, that gives me a much more self-management approach. So I can then start to put strategies in place to recognize what's going on, to know what's going on, to know when a visit to the GP is on the cards. There's just something really empowering and knowing what you can do, what to look out for. And that's what this presentation today is all about. It is just to talk about the emotional, mental health, behavioral aspects that can take place for us during perimenopause and indeed menopause. So there we go. So again, looking after my emotional and mental health, that any day of the week for me, this is like a key aspect of my life, a key aspect of what I want to do for myself. is to look after my emotional and mental health, because you know what? It can be done. It's like looking after your physical health. You know, when you're driving the car and you want to turn left, you put the indicator on to turn left because you don't want to risk somebody coming up behind you, you turning left and them get into the side of you. You come to a junction, you look left and right, and you proceed with care. And you're so mindful of looking after yourself. Like even at school, the Green Cross Code, you know, we were taught to look after our physical bodies. We weren't really taught to look after our emotional and mental health. And I'm a very strong believer in the fact that when we understand what makes up our emotional and mental health, well then, you know what, we can put strategies in place to really take care of ourselves, to apply self-care, not thinking of it as a selfish act, but just being really mindful of the things that we can do to help ourselves. That's every day. But during the perimenopause and menopausal phase, I think actually this becomes much more important for us as women to really understand what's going on with us and to take back control and not say, oh my goodness me, I am so low and I'm, you know, down in the dumps and all of that, without saying, well, you know what, that could be part of the menopause. I could be perimenopausal, and well, you know, if I am, well, that's what it is. And there's something in recognizing that. And I've always said, you know, in any presentation I do, we know our own bodies, we know our own minds, we know what way we're feeling. But if you don't know what to do about it, you know, those feelings can be very, very difficult to manage. So that's why today I want to focus on looking after your emotional and mental health. So there are emotional, mental health, behavioral changes we can experience. What I have done is just list a few of them. You may well be experiencing something different, but these would be the most commonly reported aspects around emotional and mental health. So some of the changes to our mental health could be low mood. And if you have persistent low mood, which lasts, you know, longer than a couple of weeks, and if you're noticing other things here, like you can't make decisions, you're sleeping more or less, you're eating more or less, you're hiding yourself away from people, that could also be a sign of the illness of depression. So if you're experiencing these things for more than a couple of weeks, I suppose the best thing that you could do for yourself is have a conversation with your GP. And, you know, when it's coming up to the menopause, these things can become like, can come as a shock to you actually, because if you have never had the experience of low mood, racing thoughts, constant worry, you know, feeling really stressed out, this can be like, oh my goodness me, what's happening to me? But just in recognizing these things can be a powerful tool for you in the self-management of your menopausal symptoms. Okay, so changes to your emotional health. You know, have you ever sat watching something on TV and it's not remotely sad? Like EastEnders, for example, some of the things that I have like shed a tear over, and EastEnders which weren't even sad at all. You can really start to have feelings of sadness. You can be wound up and irritable. You can be feeling really overwhelmed by things that didn't normally overwhelm you. You can be tearful, like crying at the Big Bang Theory, for example. Like, what? Seriously? Crying at the Big Bang Theory? There's nothing to cry at in the Big Bang Theory. Do you know what I mean? But you can also have feelings of anger, rage, and frustration. And if you can't find a way to actually manage that and recognize it before you let it take over, if you don't see it coming and if you don't recognize it, here, hold on a wee second, this could be part of my menopausal symptoms, then it can actually take control. And you don't want that feeling of frustration all the time, because you know what? When you're frustrated, what does it do to you? When you're feeling like rage building up in you, does it make you feel good? When you're feeling like fatigue and like so tired, and I don't mean sleepy tired, I mean that tiredness that like just makes you want to slump all day, you can't even take a deep breath, the fatigue is there. How does that make you feel? And if you can recognize it, and I would always say, do you know what? See, when I'm feeling fatigued, I rest. I give myself permission to rest. Why wouldn't I? I don't want to be plowing through a day feeling like, oh my goodness me, I cannot wait to get to the end of this day, to get sat down, put my feet up and watch a bit of TV. You know, if you have time during the day and you're feeling that real depth of fatigue, just relax, just do something, sit down, take care of yourself. Because what I have found with regards to fatigue, if you don't do something, you don't feel any better. And it's the same for those other things, you know, that feeling of sadness, the tearfulness. There's something really powerful about recognizing that this is part of life at the minute, and in recognizing it, you can do something about it. So we'll move on now to some of the behavioral changes. So, you know, if you're generally an assertive person, or even a very, very quiet person, and then you like get kind of like, you know, all het up and all annoyed and like nearly seeming aggressive, these changes to your behavior can be as a result of the hormone changes in our bodies. You can feel real tension. And, you know, when you're feeling tense, don't you, I mean, you get all your body changes and you're holding yourself really, really tight, and you can become very irritable as a result. You can snap at people. I am not a snappy type of person. And because I know that, you know, especially when I'm standing in the kitchen and there's a big fire on and I have my hands in a sink full of hot water, and the heat that I'm feeling, and it's like, oh my goodness me, could somebody please open a window? And then I'm thinking, do you know what, Siobhan, there's no point in snapping at anybody else. Open the window, go outside, cool yourself down, come back in. You know, so I recognize that I can become a wee bit more snappy, but in recognizing it and understanding that this is tied in with being perimenopausal, well then, do you know what? I don't like snapping at people. It doesn't do me any good in the long run, doesn't do other people any good. So I find ways to actually control that. And I find ways to manage it. And it is generally going outside, getting a breath of fresh air, and coming back in and starting again. We can also develop some unhelpful habits, like, you know, reaching into the fridge and taking out a bar, or, you know, big crunchy corner yogurts or crisps or nuts, or we can drink a wee bit more. But recognizing these things as well and putting measures in place to say, stop, don't do it. You know, these unhelpful habits don't make us feel any better. That's why they're called unhelpful. Because, you know, if you munch your way through like a multi-pack of crisps or like peanuts and bars and all of that, that's obviously going to have an impact on your mood, and it's going to have an impact on your body as well. Because I have yet to see myself being able to eat a 24-pack of crisps for 3 weeks in a row and not put on a stack of weight. You know, and so there's something about that, recognizing the unhelpful habits and putting measures in place to help you to control that. And as I said earlier as well, this avoidance of people that you don't really want to talk to and that you're having problems with can also just a change in our behavior, that we sometimes don't even feel confident enough, or indeed we can't even be bothered to talk to people. So just by way of drawing your attention to some of the things that can be happening to you at the moment, to recognize that you're not alone in this. Because when I say these are the common and most reported symptoms of the menopause, definitely you're not alone in it. And there's something really proactive and positive about saying, well, do you know what? Now I know, and once I know, I can start to do something about it. So the next few slides are just going to talk about some of the things, and we have touched on them before, and they're covered in much more detail in some of the other videos on the YouTube channel. But what I want to do is take you through some things that I think are going to be helpful to us and are indeed very helpful to me at the moment in terms of how to cope better during the menopause, right? How to cope better, and what can you do to cope better? Because we don't want this phase of our lives to be a miserable experience. We want this phase of our lives to be one where, you know what, we don't lose our sense of enjoyment, we don't lose our confidence, we don't sabotage ourselves, we don't talk to ourselves nastily, we don't, you know, punish ourselves. We want to go through this phase in our lives with enough knowledge and information and resources at our fingertips to help us to have a much more, would you call it pleasant menopause, or much more positive menopause. Now, there are other aspects and issues that we could discuss around the menopause, especially around, you know, what you put in your mouth and all the foods that are good for you during the menopause, and what exercises you can do, particular exercises to, you know, look after your body. We don't and can't cover these today. I don't have the expertise, but I do have a couple of associates who have expertise in it. And you know what, there's something I think really like a rounded approach to tackling the menopause and having conversations around the menopause. But today we're just going to focus on how you cope better. All right. So we're going to look at thinkings and feelings and behaviors. We're going to look at managing your stress, the lack of motivation, loss of confidence, developing self-compassion and gratitude and self-care, right? So as I say, some of the videos focus very specifically on, changing your negative automatic thinking styles, how to motivate yourself, how to build your own confidence, developing compassion and gratitude. So if you want to take a look back at some of those videos, please do, because they're full of tips and techniques on how you can really be more proactive in managing your own life. And, sometimes I just think, oh my God, things are happening to me and I have no control. And then I think, well, in actual fact, Siobhan, you do have some control. So this is just what I want to cover today. So here we go. So thinking and behavior. So how many thoughts do we have every day? And how we think about things can really affect our behavior. It can affect how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about things. It can affect us emotionally, and we talked about some of the emotions that we can feel, that sadness, that loss of control, and overwhelmed, and our thoughts can affect absolutely everything. So if you start every day with a negative thought, that can have a really detrimental impact to your full enjoyment of that whole day. Whatever you go about, if you're getting up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad, oh my God, I just don't feel well, there's just something in that I think, if we can adopt a much more positive approach, and I know this is not easy. I trot through these presentations and I talk, and it might sound like as if I find this stuff easy. No. Sometimes I have to really challenge myself. Sometimes I have to say, Siobhan, you're catastrophizing. Siobhan, you are projecting yourself into the future. You don't know what that future holds. You are worrying about things that haven't happened yet. And, you're losing the enjoyment of the present moment by worrying about things that haven't happened and may indeed never happen. So those common negative automatic thoughts that we have that can really have an impact on how we feel about ourselves, can have an impact on our behavior, can have an impact on how we engage with other people, and it can really have a massive impact in our lives. So if we begin to understand that our thoughts have an impact on all of this stuff, well then, you know what? We can start to challenge what these negative thoughts are, and constantly, consistently, and it does take practice. It really does take practice. You can start to challenge some of the common negative automatic thoughts that you have. And we have covered it before, so please go back to the presentation around negative automatic thinking styles. I just wanted to say today that if you are thinking in constant negative patterns, does it make you feel good? And if it doesn't make you feel good, is there something that you can do? And I always say, see, when it comes to thinking, there are techniques that you can use to break that pattern, to break that cycle, to encourage more positivity in your life, and really by recognizing what way you think about things. Once you recognize how you think about things, that gives you a great deal of power over how you think. So for example, if I see things as an unending pattern of bad things that happen in my life, and I'm in that mindset of God, well, that's just my life, bad things happen to me. Really? What evidence do you have for that type of thinking? Or if you're constantly worrying about what's going to happen in the future and you've got the crystal ball out and you're looking into the future, that future's not here yet. Or if you are making massive catastrophes out of some of the simplest things and you're getting yourself into an absolute frenzy of worry and concern and stress and even palpitations and feeling panicky and feeling like hot and bothered, if you're catastrophizing about things, that in itself can ruin your entire day. So what I would always say is if you can recognize how you think about things and give it a name. So, oh my goodness, I'm black and white thinking, I'm not allowing any gray areas, or I'm catastrophizing, or I'm gazing into the crystal ball, or whatever way it is that you think. And if you can attach a name to that and say, right, okay, Siobhan, you're catastrophizing, or you're gazing into the future, or you're worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or you're focusing on the past and, this is affecting my thinking. And, experiences in the past are still living inside my head, even those experiences that happened 15 or 20 years ago. So if you can label it and stand up to it and say, well, do you know what, today I'm not allowing this negative thought to ruin my day. Because negative thinking, it's like, I always think, you know, hot and cold water. If you have a swimming pool full of cold water and you try to heat it up using hot water, it's really impossible. And I think that about negative thinking as well. If you are constantly thinking negatively, isn't it sometimes easier to do that than actually transfer it over to thinking positively? Because I think negative thinking has a really deep impact on how we feel about ourselves. Whereas positive thinking, we don't even pay much heed to it until we bring attention to it. So what I want to say is, if you're recognizing patterns in your own thinking, if you're recognizing that there are particular triggers or particular things that happen to you that makes you think in a particular way, start that challenge process. Start to say, not today. You are a bully. I'm standing up to you. In fact, now that I know you, I'm not even letting you enter my head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replace you with positive thinking. So if you know, I always say, look in the mirror. It's only an example. If you're going out driving about, or if you're out doing your daily business or doing whatever you do, I say, if I look in the mirror and go, oh my goodness me, look at those wrinkles. Oh my God, look at that hair. Yeah, right. Okay. Come on, Siobhan. Seriously? Why don't you look in the mirror and say, here, do you know what? At 49 years of age, you don't look so bad. So it's just finding what works for you, and what way that you choose to talk to yourself. And recognizing that negative thinking doesn't make us feel good, makes us feel bad. And if we can find ways to replace that, and it does take practice, I said it takes practice, but if we can find ways to replace that, then, do you know what? We are allowing ourselves that breath of fresh air, that positivity, that we don't want to be going through this phase of our lives, feeling down, feeling low, feeling negative all the time, because we can replace that with one positive thought in the morning. Today is going to be a great day. You know, and I feel amazing. I am amazing. I am wonderful. What it is that you say to yourself and how you think about things. Today is going to be a good day. It's not going to be a catastrophe. Today, if something bad happens to me, I am not going to assume that it is because I am a bad person or that bad things always happen to me. I'm going to take it as one experience, and I'm not going to live my life by that rule of negative thinking in my own head. So we've talked about the way that our thinking can affect our behavior, it can affect how we feel, it can affect us emotionally. And so whatever it is that's going on in your life, you know, how you think about it. And I have given the example before about a friend of mine going up Broad Street in Maherfelt, Broad Street because it is a broad street, of course. And I was going up the other side of the street and I'm like, hello, 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 blah, blah, blah. Right, okay, there was a bit of traffic noise, but I thought that she saw me. And I thought, I tell you, there she is away marching up the street. She saw me and she ignored me. And then I went home and I was like, well, what did I do wrong? So I started getting myself into this thinking process of going, oh my God, maybe I've done something, maybe I've said something, maybe, you know, she saw me, but she didn't speak to me. So I sent her a message on Facebook and I says, here, I saw you on Broad Street earlier on. Is everything okay? You saw me, but you didn't speak to me. Have I done something? And she went, actually, I was coming out of the opticians and just left my glasses in to get them fixed. I didn't even see you, Siobhan. And I'm like, here I was making up these big stories in my own head, and it affected my whole day. It affected me emotionally. It affected me behaviorally. It was like, you know, that palpitation thing when you think you've upset somebody. And I was making up a whole big story all on my own for a woman who had left her glasses in the opticians and didn't even see me. So, lesson for me, do not make assumptions, Siobhan. Do not make assumptions. Do not project how you're feeling into somebody else's behavior. Because you know what? The impact on me was a kind of a miserable day, all because somebody didn't speak to me. So do you know what I mean? And you'll know yourself. We all know ourselves. We all know the wee things that kind of like niggle at us and the ways that we think about things. And, you know, how do we change that? How do we change it? Change it by thinking more positively. And as I say, this stuff is easy to some people. It's not easy for other people. But if you put a wee bit of like practice in, and if you practice it every day, and if you introduce one positive thought every morning and one positive thought every evening before you go to sleep, you know, then it becomes routine. And you will notice how it affects your feelings, how it affects your behavior, how it affects you emotionally. One positive thought, two positive thoughts, three positive thoughts. get rid of that negative automatic thinking. And it's called automatic, you know, because it is so, it's like driving an automatic car. I don't even have to change the gears, right? So the gears are immaterial. And that sometimes can happen with your thinking. It's so automatic that you don't even notice it. So what I want you to do today is to practice recognizing your negative thinking and replacing it with a positive thought. Yeah, today. Just do it today and see how it makes you feel. And as time goes on, and I would always say, when you're trying to do these things and introduce new things into, you know, like into your life and in your thinking styles, routine is really important. It's like building a new habit. Routine is really important. And if you can pick a time of the day, and I always say first thing in the morning and last thing at night, because you haven't started your day in the morning and you're ending your day at night. So if you can do it at those 2 times of the day, then it becomes routine. And then you can practice, practice, practice. All right? So we do have power over them. And again, it's that recognition and that taking control and taking the power out of the negative thoughts. Taking the power out of them by saying, stop. You're a bully. I recognize you. I can see what you're doing to me. And today is not the day. Today, in fact, is the day that I take charge and I am throwing you out the window. I'm kicking you out the door. I'm doing whatever because you have no place in my head and in, you know, in my life, because you're affecting everything else that goes on. Motivation is another really, for me anyway, and I suppose when I think through these presentations and when I'm preparing for these presentations, I always think about the things that impact me most. And for me, like being perimenopausal, I lost motivation to do any form of exercise at all. And I was forcing myself, and I was joining gyms here, and I was doing like 6 a.m. gym sessions and, you know, all of that. And it just simply was not working for me. I just lost my mojo. And how did I get that mojo back? You know, getting your mojo back is actually quite a challenge when you think about it. So one exercise that I found when I was researching, you know, how to manage your motivation, how to get your motivation back when it leaves you, there was one exercise I found which it worked for me. It may not work for you, but it was an exercise called What Am I Tolerating? Right? So when I thought about my life, like I left a full-time, busy job based in Belfast about 2.5 years ago, roughly. And I came home and I set up my computer on the kitchen table and I set up my own business. Right, great, says everybody, wonderful, Siobhan. But what happened to me was that I sat all day. I never moved. I didn't go out for a walk. I didn't do any form of exercise. And of course, guess what happened? I started to put on weight. And I was having this conversation in my own head saying, oh my God, those trousers that you used to wear at work, they don't fit you anymore. You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to do something. Go out for a walk. It didn't happen. And it didn't happen one day and then the next day. And then I started to really beat myself up. What's wrong with you? Why can you not go out for a walk? Are you so lazy that you can't go out for a walk? What's stopping you? Oh, for God's sake, Siobhan, you'll go out for a walk tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, get up early, get the trainers on, go for a walk. Oh, God almighty, where I live, I have so many options to do some beautiful walks. And Siobhan did not walk. You see, this really bothered me because I was wondering why my motivation had deserted me. But of course, it was like 2 years ago, and I was perimenopausal 2 years ago. And I began to write, okay, so what is it that I need to be saying to myself? Because see, beating yourself up, it is the road to no town. It really is the road to no town. Do not give yourself permission to beat yourself up. Actually begin to become more proactive in your own life, because what I did was I then said, right, okay, Siobhan, so what is it you're putting up with? What is it that you're tolerating? And what is it that you can no longer tolerate? And I was able to turn that around and say, well, I cannot tolerate putting on 1.5 stone in a year, right? I can't tolerate that. And do you know why I can't tolerate? Because if I put 1.5 stone on in 1 year and I was 47, by the time I'd be 50, you know, my weight would have increased 5-fold. No, wouldn't have increased 5-fold. I would have put like nearly 5 stone on. 5 stone over a few years. And I just thought, can you tolerate that, Siobhan? In actual fact, no, I cannot. Now, my diet was fine, but it was just the fact that my lifestyle was so incredibly sedentary, sitting all the time, doing nothing. And when I began to think, right, okay, I'm not tolerating this anymore, I'm not putting up with it. I can't, well, number one, I can't afford to replace an entire wardrobe of clothes. You know what I mean? Like, come on. And I have a house full of clothes. And I began to think, right, okay, Siobhan, so I can't tolerate it. What am I going to do? What am I going to do about it? And what is my first step? And there's always like a kind of, when it comes to motivation, there's a push and a pull. So the pull for me was actually being able to wear the clothes that I always wore. And the push for me was that recognition that in 4 or 5 years' time, I'm going to be like not able to fit in my clothes, never able to fit in my clothes and buy a new wardrobe. So there was something that was pushing me. And that push was to actually manage my weight. And the pull for me was actually fitting into my clothes and feeling good about myself, actually. I needn't be saying that I didn't want to feel good about myself. Of course I did. Really wanted to feel good about myself. But you know what really helped me as well? I did start to walk. But I have to say that I got myself a buddy. I have a friend who I go out canoeing with, and we talked about walking. There's a new walkway opened outside Clary, and we decided we would go down and give it a try. The beauty of it is that, for me, is a huge motivator, because Helen and I have this conversation all the time. If you didn't go, I wouldn't go either. Isn't that brilliant? So if there's something that you feel that you are having difficulty in motivating yourself, is there somebody that you can talk to? Is there somebody that can support you? Reach out to them. Reach out to them, because you know what? If you've lost your motivation, isn't it better to talk to somebody and get some help? By somebody who's close to you, a friend, relative, neighbor, whoever it is. Can somebody else help you to build your motivation? And you know what? In building that motivation with help, it's really proactive, because at some stage you might well say, do you know what? I can do it alone. And there's a really feel-good factor about that. And I feel great now, being motivated to get up in the morning or in the evening, whatever it is, and go out for a walk. And we walk 4 miles a day. We might miss a day if it's raining, but there's something really powerful in understanding, you know, when it comes to wanting to do something for yourself, what is it that you're putting up with in your life? What change do you want to make? What change is necessary for you to allow you to feel more motivated again? And what is pushing you forward, and what's pulling you forward? And recognizing these things in your own life can help you to become much more motivated. Getting somebody to help you. And what's the shame in getting somebody to help you? There's no shame in it at all. I am delighted with the fact that I reached out to Helen. I am absolutely over the moon. And every time we're out walking, we're like, oh my God, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this just gorgeous? Aren't we so lucky? Aren't we so lucky? So if you've lost your motivation, understand why you've lost your motivation, but make a plan. Look at the things that are going on in your life. If there's something that you want to change, how do you start to make a change? Set yourself a goal. Look at the options that you have to motivate yourself. Look at the reality of your situation, and always think, is what I'm trying to do or trying to change, is it realistic for me? And then, do you know what? Just get started. Just get started. And always look at how willing you are to actually make this change. How willing are you to get yourself motivated to get a new job, to move house, to paint the living room, whatever it is. Set yourself a goal. And really, you know what, when it comes to those goals, be specific, you know, all of the SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So when you want to motivate yourself and you find it really difficult, you know, even the smallest of goals. The smallest of goals can really help to get you thinking, okay, do you know what, I can do this. And I can't put up with this anymore, and I'm going to change it. And do you know what, even like saying those things to yourself, rather than like, oh my God, you didn't do it. You're so lazy. Why did you not do it? You'll do it tomorrow. Oh my God, you didn't do it today either, Siobhan. What is going on? I'm nearly shouting at myself. I don't shout at other people, so I certainly stopped shouting at myself, because it wasn't making me feel one hair better. It was making me feel much, much worse. So if you've lost your mojo, if you've lost your motivation, just Recognize that there are things you can do to get it back. Wow, brilliant, amazing. One tiny step at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't set massive goals. One tiny change, one tiny step at a time. And it works wonders. And celebrate. Celebrate those tiny, tiny gains. Celebrate walking a mile. Celebrate painting one wall in the living room. Celebrate, you know, making one job application. These marginal, these tiny, tiny gains, do you know what? They're so tiny, but when they start to build and build and build, you'll see a phenomenal change in your own motivation. But also pat yourself on the back. Congratulate yourself. Be kind to yourself. Talk nicely to yourself. These are the things that can make a difference to your motivation. And I know that during this phase in my life, that motivation is quite difficult. But now, because I have started, what I find now is I can sustain it. And that's the good news. Get started, and then you will be able to sustain it. Oh, self-confidence. Self-confidence. Do you know what? What I have discovered about myself, I can't say I've always been like so confident. No, I can't say that because that would be a lie. You know what? We go through phases in our lives when we feel great about ourselves and things are going well and your confidence levels are really high. And there are other times when your confidence deserts you. But I have noticed during the perimenopausal phase of my life, I tell you what makes me lose my confidence. See, doing this here today, right? So here I might be sitting doing a Zoom call, right? I always know what I'm talking about. I always know in my own head what I want to say. And when I start talking, next thing I get this hot flush coming right up and I feel it. And the next thing I'm like, blah, 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 oh, and I can feel my face going red. And people say that nobody can see it, but by God, I can see it when I'm looking at myself. And you know what? That injures my self-confidence. That makes me go, oh no. And then as I was thinking through the menopause and how passionate I am about, you know, having a powerful menopause, not a menopause that, you know, changes me entirely, having a powerful, positive menopause. Do you know what? So what? If my face like gets hot and bothered, so what? Why would that dinge my confidence? So when you think about your own self-confidence at this time in your life, and it can be eroded really by our experience of the menopause, and it can be eroded by other people's behaviors to us during our menopause. Our self-confidence is like, it's deeply personal. It's called self-confidence. It's confidence in yourself. It's how you feel about yourself. And it shouldn't be determined by other people. And I would always say, you know, if you have lost your self-confidence, what is it that you can do proactively for yourself to rebuild your self-confidence? You know, if you are noticing physical changes about yourself, if you have low mood, and low mood can affect your self-confidence as well, and if you're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and really stressed out and really tense, that can affect your self-confidence as well. What is it that you can do to build your self-confidence? How do you talk to yourself? Do you really look in the mirror every day and go, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you are so unique? Or do you look in the mirror and start hammering yourself and, oh my God, look at that, the spots in your face, 49 years of age? Do you do that to yourself? And there's something really powerful in thinking about your friends, other women who are perimenopausal, menopausal, who are going through changes in their lives. They're going through bodily changes, you know, things are happening. And if one of them turned around and said, oh my God, look at the size of me, I am absolutely huge. Oh my, I honest to God, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Would you go, I know, absolutely, you are huge. That kindness that you show to others, turn that on yourself and be kinder to yourself. How you speak to yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you do in your daily routines, what habits do you have? You know, all of these unhelpful habits can affect your self-confidence as well. So I mean, I am so passionate about self-confidence, especially in women. I'm not saying, you know, not saying men need support as well, but I think for us as women, as we go through challenges in life and all the different phases in life, you know, what is it that I can say to myself and do for myself to make myself feel much more confident? You know, even this, like sitting up straight rather than sitting like this here, walking tall, dressing the way you want to dress, having your hair the way you want to have your hair, if you want to wear a bit of makeup, whatever it is, but how you feel about yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how kind you are to yourself. We're going to talk about compassion and gratitude later, but how compassionate are you to yourself? What is it that you're doing for yourself that nurtures you and makes you feel better? Because you know what, that starts to shine through, and that's self-confidence. It's how you feel about yourself, how you're kind to yourself, how you accept yourself, how you say, do you know what, this is a phase of my life, it comes and it goes, and that's it. And do you know what, hold yourself, be kind to yourself, care for yourself, because at this particular time in our lives, when things are changing, you know, things that maybe we don't feel that we can control, certainly can't control the onset of the menopause, but what is it that I can do to nurture myself and to show myself some love and some kindness? So when your confidence has deserted you, build yourself up, talk kindly, talk nicely to yourself and about yourself. You know, this constant thing that I know I do as a woman is like, somebody says, oh gosh, Siobhan, that blouse you're wearing is beautiful, and I'm like, oh, sure, that other thing about it in Primark for £2 in the sale 5 years ago. Yeah. And you say, thank you very much, I love it too. You know, why did you buy it if you didn't love it? So, you know, that maybe it is a Northern Irish thing, I don't know. But, you know, what is it that we say to ourselves? How do we nurture that loving care for ourselves as human beings? And especially now when there's so many changes taking place in our lives. So, self-esteem as well. You know, that self-esteem thing, the menopause, I mean, life can affect your self-esteem. Self-esteem generally is formed in early life experiences, and as we go through life, that's how people talk to us, how we're treated, you know, the behavior of people that we think are important in our lives, and if they don't treat us very well, that can really get us thinking like, I'm not good enough, I really shouldn't be trying to do things, I don't believe that I can, and that's that view that you have of yourself, which can be tainted by previous negative experiences. And if your self-esteem is feeling low at the moment, what is it that you can do to build that? You can change those negative automatic thinking styles for a start. You can, you know, reframe the conversations that you're having with yourself. And again, self-confidence and self-esteem are so closely linked together. I would say, speak kindly to yourself. Recognize that I have control over my own self-esteem. It is mine. Somebody may have said something to me in 1973. Well, I was only 2, but anyway, in 1979, 1980, that I still remember and that still affects how I feel about myself. And you know what, even by turning and saying, you know what, that was 25 or actually 40 years ago, and that's still having an impact on me. Why? And you know what, I'm dropping that now. I'm leaving that where it belongs, 40 years in the past. And that expression of compassion, that way we talk to ourselves is so important to build both our self-confidence and our self-esteem. And don't we want to live a life where we're feeling wonderful, regardless of the menopause, that we are doing the best that we can, that we're being kind and nurturing to ourselves? Isn't that what we want? We don't want to be laid low or laid low. We don't want to feel low. So can we do something for ourselves today and every day that makes us feel really, really good, really, really positive about ourselves? Can we start to address that negativity? Can we start to replace it with positive thinking, positive conversations with ourselves? You're beautiful, Siobhan. Look at you, you look amazing. Can we start to change those conversations that we have with ourselves? Can we become more compassionate? And developing that compassion, you know, what would you say to a friend if they were saying to themselves the things that you say to you? And would you say any of the things that you say to yourself to a friend? No. So there's a bit about, you know, giving yourself permission to actually say, do you know what? And this is not like, might sound a wee bit arrogant. I'm not into the arrogance thing. I'm into treating yourself well. I'm into recognizing the wonderful skills and attributes that you have. And we all have wonderful skills and attributes and knowledge and how we interact with people. We are all absolutely amazing, right? I am amazing. Of course I am. I get up in the morning, I put my 2 feet on the floor and I get up. wow, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And so I talk to myself kindly. Of course, there's always that niggle that comes in sometimes where you're very overcritical of yourself. But how can you develop a more compassionate approach to yourself? Because if you think about the people that you're really kind to, and then you're unkind to yourself, well, why? Why are they unkind to yourself? Surely kindness to yourself is a precursor to kindness to others. And loving yourself, and I don't mean like, oh, I love myself, look at me, and I'm gorgeous. I mean, really loving yourself for all of your quirks, for all of the, you know, things and behaviors and everything about you, and forgive yourself for something that happened 40 years ago, 10 years ago. Develop compassion, and gratitude is a powerful tool. Gratitude. I am so grateful today as I sit here as a 49-year-old perimenopausal woman. I am grateful that I have this house, that I have a roof over my head, that I do feel well enough to put my feet on the ground in the morning, come downstairs, have a shower, make myself a cup of coffee, get my breakfast. I am grateful that I have friends. I am grateful for my family. I live a grateful life, right? Rather than going, oh my God, I don't like this house. See, there's a leak in the ceiling there, which actually there is a leak in the ceiling. You know, and oh my God, the front garden's a mess and blah, blah. You know what? So what? I am grateful that I have this house. I'm grateful I have a front yard. You know what I mean? So if you can start to express gratitude, daily gratitude practice, write it down if you need to write it down. Daily gratitude practice is such an incredible tool to help us to maintain positivity, to help us to build our confidence and self-esteem. Because if you're grateful for things and you can express gratitude, that actually makes you feel better. And if you can match that with compassion and self-compassion, a very powerful tool to actually make this phase of our lives feel better. And it takes practice, practice, practice. And building new habits for yourself around challenging negative thinking, building your own confidence, speaking kindly to yourself, expressing compassion to yourself, feeling compassionate about yourself, caring for yourself, doing things that you know nurture you as an individual, taking time out if you need to take time out, rest when you need to rest. These are the ways that you can treat yourself compassionately and express gratitude for all that is good rather than thinking about all that is bad. I do it daily and it has an effect, but as I say, I am not a perfect being at all. I don't live this like wonderful life where I'm actually just gliding through. Of course I have bad days. We all have bad days, but as long as it doesn't become a bad week and a bad month and then bad quarter and then a bad year, actually recognizing that, you know what, if you're having a bad day, don't beat yourself up, but tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another day. And there's something as well about, you know, managing that stress. And mindfulness is a really key technique and a really key tool to help you to manage stress. Because life in itself can be very stressful. And if we're feeling that, like, you know, that tension that can come with menopause and that sense of irritability and maybe anger and rage and, you know, snappiness and, you know, stress and all of that bundled together can make us feel really, really bad. So how can we build mindfulness in to our daily lives? Mindfulness really is about taking notice. It's about taking notice of what's going on right here, right now, physically, emotionally, right? So there's a really short technique. If you're finding yourself getting into I would call it a fit of bad temper, or if you're feeling snappy, what can you do to build that wee tiny, tiny, tiny bit of time in between your thoughts and feelings and your action or reaction? A tiny, tiny wee space of time. What can you do? Actually use mindfulness to stop. So the technique that I'm going to talk about is called the stop technique. So if I'm standing in the kitchen and the fire is blazing, I have my hands in hot water, washing the dishes, and I can feel this bubbling rage coming up through and the heat that comes with it. So I'm like, right, okay, stop. S is for stop. T. Take a breath. Take a deep breath. Take 2 or 3 deep breaths. Observe. Observe how you're feeling. Observe what's going on. Observe your emotions. Observe that sense of what's happening in your body physically. So just observe. Only observe, make no judgment. So you stop, you take a couple of deep breaths, maybe 2, 3, 4. You observe what's going on, how you're feeling, and you know, this rage, I can feel it coming up through my body. In actual fact, then, by stopping and breathing, observing what's going on, I can then proceed. STOP. Stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. All it does is build that millisecond or few seconds into how I'm feeling, and then the reaction or the action. So I could say, oh, for goodness sake, who lit that fire? Don't you know that I'm doing the dishes at this time of the evening? The kitchen's boiling, the oven has been on, and it's absolutely boiling. I am melting. I don't want to say that. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be snapping at people. What I want to be able to do is to say, stop, take a breath, observe what's going on, how you're feeling, and then proceed. And it works. And again, you know, mindfulness, they call it a simple technique. Mindfulness is quite a technical, well, not a technical, it's quite difficult to remember to be mindful. That's the thing. If we could remember to be mindful, that would be great. But also just take a notice. If you're standing at the sink and you're feeling that way and you look out and you can see the birds in the trees, so you're actually taking notice of something else rather than that sense of like, that you have. So take notice, daily take notice of all of the beauty that surrounds us. Take notice of how you're feeling within your body, how you're feeling emotionally. Just take notice of all of this stuff. Don't judge yourself because of it. Just observe how you're feeling. And that, just by bringing your mind home to rest in the here and now, is what mindfulness teaches you to do. And you know, there is a breathing exercise just using your hand. You breathe in through your nose, hold it, and out through your mouth. In through your nose, hold it, out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And what that does is use your breath as the anchor. Use your breath as the anchor. And as you breathe, the bodily sensations, you can feel tension leaving your body. You can feel stress leaving your body. And it is about living in the here and now, because see, the past, that's gone. The present is yet to come. We have no control over either anymore. What we can do is live in the here and now, and that is mindfulness. Some of those, like 2 short techniques, if you think that they would be useful, start to practice them. Start to practice them and see if they have an impact on you reducing your stress. Or if you're getting to that stage of like, oh my, you know, that panic, you nearly get into like a real panic. The 5 senses exercise, 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can taste, and 1 thing that you can smell. Because you know that draws your attention to focused exercise. 5 senses mindfulness exercise. 3 simple exercises that you can try and build into daily life, whichever is easiest for you, or just simple act of taking notice, of looking around you, of, you know, looking at the trees, listening to the birds. Silence even? Wow, silence is a powerful thing. So we have come to the end of our presentation now, and I just want to reflect back on some of the things that we talked about, and that self-care and well-being plan that you can develop for yourself. So the elements of self-care, what is it that I can do to take care of myself? Be mindful of how you speak to yourself. What tone of voice do you use? What words do you use when you're speaking to yourself? Are you overcritical of yourself? Do you beat yourself up? Do you think negatively all the time? Is your self-confidence really low? What can you do to build it? What do you say to yourself in the morning when you look in the mirror? What do you say to yourself during the day if you make a wee mistake? Are you having negative conversations with yourself? Are you thinking badly about yourself? You know, are you beating yourself up constantly and persistently? Have you no compassion for yourself? Are you unkind to yourself? You know, do you express gratitude? So if you're thinking about self-care and what you can do to build your own self-care and well-being plan, start simply by addressing each of the aspects that we covered in this presentation today. Motivating yourself. What am I putting up with in life? Do I have to put up with it? And these questions you can ask yourself. But when we're perimenopausal and menopausal, I firmly believe that kindness to ourselves and acceptance of this phase that we're going through in life, accept it for what it is. Recognize that there are things that you can do for yourself. Start to write things down that you want to do for yourself. I commit to speaking kindly to myself for one full day. I commit to challenging my negative thinking for one full week. I commit to replacing every negative thought with 3 positive thoughts. So what is it that you can commit for yourself, for your benefit, to make this experience, which some women sail through, some women find it incredibly challenging and incredibly difficult. What is it that you can do to nurture yourself and be kind and loving towards yourself, and to challenge all of that stuff that we talked about today, and how we build ourselves up during this particular phase in our lives when everything's changing, our estrogen levels are dropping, our body shape's changing, there are things that are happening that we could be, my goodness me, what is this? Your emotions can change, your mental health can change, your behavior can change. Recognize it, recognize it, recognize it, and do something for yourself. Do something for yourself. So I'm all on for, you know, that that self-management, that taking back control, self-care. Three very powerful things that you can do for yourself at this stage in your life. So listen, there's my contact details. If you want to talk about any of the things that I have talked about today in any more detail, feel free to get in contact with me. Otherwise, listen, have a great day. I hope that there was at least one thing that you found useful in that presentation. And you know what? Sometimes it just takes one wee tiny thing to change absolutely everything. Have a good day. That's me away. Cheers. Bye.